Hey everyone, tonight we're trading modern comforts for chains, chaos, and a strange Roman holiday where the world turned completely upside down. Forget cozy celebrations with warm drinks and soft lights. During Saturnalia, slaves were briefly treated like kings, sort of, while their masters played the fool, drank too much and insisted it was all in good fun. Imagine waking up and being told you're in charge of the house, but also expected to sing, dance, serve food, survive pranks, and pretend it's all liberating while still being a slave tomorrow. You'd wear your master's clothes, eat scraps from golden plates, and maybe be crowned King of Misrule. Which sounds nice until you realise it's mostly yelling and symbolic humiliation. You wouldn't last a day. Between the forced laughter, philosophical debates over wine, and the constant dread that this fake freedom ends at sunset, you'd be wishing for a normal day of labour. And that's before someone starts juggling fire or reciting Virgil backwards. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, let your mind wander, and allow the gentle rhythm of my voice to lull you towards sleep. Maybe settle in, pull your blanket a little closer, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Part 1. Wake up. You're in Rome. Now, hey, you're awake. Kind of. Your eyes flutter open, and for a moment you think you're home. Maybe it's the warmth of the sun on your face, or the sound of voices in the distance, or the slightly off-putting smell of sweat, dust, and something burnt. Then it hits you. You're not home. You're not in your bed. You're not in your own time. You're in ancient Rome, and statistically speaking, you're a slave, not a senator, not a poet, not even a lowly baker. You're property. You're someone else's walking, breathing, back-breaking investment. And welcome to the city of marble and misery. But wait, don't panic just yet. Because you woke up on a special day, a weird day, a day when the world flips upside down. No, it's not Thanksgiving. There's no turkey, no gravy, no pumpkin spice, anything. It's something better. Today is Saturnalia, the strangest, wildest, most upside-down day of the Roman calendar. And for once in your short, brutal, callus-covered life, today might not be a total nightmare. Before we dive headfirst into public nudity, indoor gambling, and wine-fueled anarchy, do me a small favour. If you like drifting off to weird, slow-burning history stories, consider hitting that subscribe button. Only if you're into it, of course. No pressure. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is, and also what topic you would like to see the next story on. Dim the lights. Wrap yourself in something soft and slightly less scratchy than a slave's tunic. Maybe put on that white noise generator that sounds like distant thunder or an amphora being tipped over in slow motion. And as you sink into your mattress, hopefully not made of straw and regret, let's begin tonight's story together. Because for once, just once, it's good to be a slave. Relatively speaking, of course. Chapter 1. Life as Roman property. Don't get too comfortable. Before we get to the fun part, the drinking, the dancing, the yelling of Io Saturnalia until your lungs collapse, let's talk about the rest of your year. You know, the other 364 days when Saturnalia isn't happening and everything sucks. Life as a Roman slave? It's not great. You belong to someone. That's not a metaphor. You're not an intern. You're not employed. You're owned, legally, like a table or a goat or a goat standing on a table. You might have been born into slavery, or maybe you were captured during a war. Maybe pirates sold you off. Or maybe your village couldn't pay taxes, so Rome helped itself to the next best thing, you. Your name doesn't matter. You don't have one anymore. Your Servus, or Puella if you're a girl and unlucky, which, spoiler alert, you are. Your diet is rough. Bread if your owner's feeling generous. Gruel if they're not. Spoiled wine if someone forgot to check the amphora lid. No utensils, no seconds, no complaints. Your bed, a blanket in a storage room. Your bathroom, the nearest alley. Your daily schedule, wake, work, don't die, repeat. You could be a house slave, cleaning, cooking, raising someone else's kids, or a field slave out in the sun for 14 hours, turning soil into wealth you'll never see. Or if fate's cruel enough, and it usually is, you might be a gladiator or a mine worker. If you're in the mines, don't bother remembering this day. You won't make it to the next one, so yeah, that's your baseline. And that's what makes Saturnalia so bizarre. Because once a year, just once, the rules change. The gods look the other way, the masters loosen their grip, and for a short chaotic moment, slaves become kings. Kind of. Chapter 2, Saturn Hits Different. The name of the festival? Saturnalia. It honours the god Saturn, ancient, weird, old as time, half-retired and a little unstable. He ruled the world in what Romans called the Golden Age, a mythical time when everyone was equal. The land was fertile and no one needed money, taxes or emperors. It was paradise. Naturally, Rome turned that memory into a holiday that's half party, half riot. Saturnalia starts on December 17th. At first it was just a single day, but Romans being Romans, they couldn't help themselves. One day became 2, then 3, then 7. By the time the empire hit full swing, Saturnalia was a week-long carnival of chaos. And the best part? Slaves, like you, got a taste of freedom. Not actual freedom, of course. Let's not get wild, but symbolic. Pretend freedom. You got to wear your master's clothes, eat fancy food, speak without permission, mock your owners to their faces. Imagine walking up to the man who whipped you last Tuesday and saying, "Nice tunic, Gaius. Did your mother weave that blindfolded?" And instead of a beating, he laughs. Because today, the gods say it's funny. The Roman world turns inside out. Masters serve slaves. Children lecture parents. Part 1. Wake up. You're in Rome. Now hey, you're awake, kind of. Your eyes flutter open and for a moment you think you're home. Maybe it's the warmth of the sun on your face, or the sound of voices in the distance, or the slightly off-putting smell of sweat, dust and something burnt. Then it hits you. You're not home. You're not in your bed. You're not in your own time. You're in ancient Rome. And statistically speaking, you're a slave. Not a senator, not a poet, not even a lowly baker. You're property. You're someone else's walking, breathing, back-breaking investment. And welcome to the city of marble and misery. But wait, don't panic just yet. Because you woke up on a special day, a weird day, a day when the world flips upside down. No, it's not Thanksgiving. There's no turkey, no gravy, no pumpkin spice, anything. It's something better. Today is Saturnalia, the strangest, wildest, most upside-down day of the Roman calendar. And for once in your short, brutal, callus-covered life, today might not be a total nightmare. Before we dive headfirst into public nudity, indoor gambling and wine-fueled anarchy, do me a small favour. If you like drifting off to weird, slow-burning history stories, consider hitting that subscribe button. Only if you're into it, of course. No pressure. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is, and also what topic you would like to see the next story on. Dim the lights. Wrap yourself in something soft and slightly less scratchy than a slave's tunic. Maybe put on that white noise generator that sounds like distant thunder or an amphora being tipped over in slow motion. And as you sink into your mattress, hopefully not made of straw and regret, let's begin tonight's story together. Because for once, just once, it's good to be a slave. Relatively speaking, of course. Chapter 1. Life as Roman Property. Don't get too comfortable. Before we get to the fun part, the drinking, the dancing, the yelling of Io Saturnalia until your lungs collapse, let's talk about the rest of your year. You know, the other 364 days when Saturnalia isn't happening and everything sucks. Life as a Roman slave? It's not great. You belong to someone. That's not a metaphor. You're not an intern. You're not employed. You are owned, legally, like a table, or a goat standing on a table. You might have been born into slavery. Or maybe you were captured during a war. Maybe pirates sold you off. Or maybe your village couldn't pay taxes. So Rome helped itself to the next best thing, you. Your name doesn't matter. You don't have one anymore. Your servus, or puella, if you're a girl and unlucky, which, spoiler alert, you are. Your diet is rough. Bread, if your owner's feeling generous. Gruel, if they're not. Spoiled wine, if someone forgot to check the amphora lid. No utensils, no seconds, no complaints. Your bed, a blanket in a storage room, your bathroom, the nearest alley, your daily schedule, wake, work, don't die, repeat. You could be a house slave, cleaning, cooking, raising someone else's kids, or a field slave out in the sun for 14 hours, turning soil into wealth you'll never see. Or if fate's cruel enough, and it usually is, you might be a gladiator or a mine worker. If you're in the mines, don't bother remembering this day. You won't make it to the next one. So yeah, that's your baseline. And that's what makes Saturnalia so bizarre. Because once a year, just once, the rules change. The gods look the other way. The masters loosen their grip. And for a short, chaotic moment, slaves become kings. Kind of. Chapter 2. Saturn hits different. The name of the festival, Saturnalia. It honours the god Saturn. Ancient, weird, old as time, half retired, and a little unstable. He ruled the world in what Romans called the Golden Age, a mythical time when everyone was equal, the land was fertile, and no one needed money, taxes, or emperors. It was paradise. Naturally, Rome turned that memory into a holiday that's half party, half riot. Saturnalia starts on December the 17th. At first, it was just a single day, but Romans being Romans, they couldn't help themselves. One day became 2, then 3, then 7. By the time the empire hit full swing, Saturnalia was a week-long carnival of chaos. And the best part? Slaves, like you, got a taste of freedom. Not actual freedom, of course. Let's not get wild. But symbolic, pretend freedom. You got to wear your master's clothes, eat fancy food, speak without permission, mock your owners to their faces. Imagine walking up to the man who whipped you last Tuesday and saying, "Nice tunic, Gaius. Did your mother weave that blindfolded?" And instead of a beating, he laughs, because today the gods say it's funny. The Roman world turns inside out. Masters serve slaves. Children lecture parents. Rich men pretend to be poor, and everyone wears weird hats called pileus. symbols of liberty, little cloth cones on their heads, like Freedom Party favours. It's not quite justice, but it's something. It's absurd, but also beautiful. And for one sacred, absurd week, you're allowed to exist. Chapter 3. Breakfast of Temporary Champions. Let's say your master isn't the cruelest man in Rome. He's average. Maybe owns 5 slaves. Maybe he's a minor bureaucrat. Maybe he's asleep right now, snoring on a silk cushion while drooling wine. You wake up in the slave quarters, but something's different today. There's bread on the table. Warm, not rock hard. There's wine, not vinegar. There's meat. Real, actual meat. Probably a bit old, but still. And no one's barking orders. No one's swinging a rod. Your fellow slaves look confused, a little afraid. Because this is the only time of year when kindness feels like a trap. But it isn't. Not today. You all get dressed. Not in rags, but in togas. Real togas. Not expertly tied. You're slaves, not fashion designers. But still it feels luxurious. Your master appears. But instead of his usual scowl, he's smiling. Awkwardly. Like someone forced him to rehearse human emotions in a mirror. He raises a goblet. Io Saturnalia, he says. You and your fellow slaves echo it back, uncertainly. Io Saturnalia. And so it begins. The feast is laid out. Roasted meats, stuffed dates, honeyed wine. You're invited, no, expected, to eat. Not from the floor, not in the corner, at the table, with the family. And somewhere, deep in your stomach, past the shock and fear, past the months of starvation and labour, you feel something dangerous. Hope. Part 2. You step outside into the Roman street, barefoot, because of course you are. Shoes are for citizens or for rich slaves in fancy households, and you're more of the utility variety, the kind they name by function, not affection. You were born in the countryside or captured in war, or maybe you were once free and got sold for debts. Details, details. The important part is you now belong to someone who owns both your labour and your heartbeat. But today, it's different. There's a strange buzz in the air. The domus is louder than usual. Something smells like pine, which is weird, because Romans don't typically decorate unless it's with columns or blood. You hear laughter, and not the usual snide patrician chuckles at your expense. Real laughter. A voice calls out, not with an order, but with something bizarre, an invitation. Your dominus, the man who has owned your sweat, your hours, your silence, is wearing a ridiculous hat. It's pointed, colourful, floppy, and possibly stolen from a children's entertainer centuries ahead of its time. He's holding a cup of wine, and he's smiling. At you. This is unsettling. You, understandably, assume you've died. Perhaps from overwork or a poorly thrown chamber pot. But no, you're alive, and it's Saturnalia. Let's pause a moment here, because if you've been unlucky enough to live your life in servitude, Saturnalia is not just a holiday. It's not even a reprieve. It's the one day, or days, depending on the emperor's mood, when the world flips upside down, and for a little while the slave becomes not quite the master, but certainly something close to it. Your dominus pours you wine, pours it, with his own hand. No trick, no poison, just cheap sour Falernian from a cracked clay jug. You drink it cautiously, like it might be a test. He refills your cup, then says something you've never heard him say. Sit. And just like that, it begins. Saturnalia is Rome's great pressure valve, a carnival of controlled chaos, a ritualized rebellion, a sacred inversion. Think of it as a purge for the soul, minus the violence, usually. Though some years things get a little out of hand. For the next several days, depending on the emperor's generosity, slaves are allowed, no, encouraged, to mock their masters, speak freely and indulge. There's feasting, gambling, singing in the streets, even nudity, because Romans love two things: marble and making things unnecessarily erotic. You're dressed in a synthesis now, a relaxed tunic usually worn at banquets, and, yes, you also have a hat. It's called a pileus, the conical cap that symbolises freedom. You're not free, of course, that would be madness. But for these few days you're invited to pretend, and sometimes pretending is all you need to stay sane. At dinner the household gathers, not to serve but to recline. On cushions, around a low table piled with delicacies, dates soaked in honey, roasted dormice, don't ask, platters of fish, and jugs of wine that multiply like Roman debts. You're allowed to joke, to laugh, to insult. Carefully, of course. One wrong joke and next week your tongue could be nailed to a door. The highlight, the mock king, Rex Saturnalitius. Elected from the slaves, this jester monarch commands the household, giving ridiculous orders. Everyone must obey. Make your dominus dance. Done. Declare a no-tunic day. Sure. Demand poetry recited backwards while standing in the fountain. Absolutely. For now, you are the spirit of the season, and no one can touch you. But here's the thing. Underneath the laughter, the wine, the ridiculous dancing, there's always a weight. You feel it even as you feast. Because you know something vital. Saturnalia ends. It always does. The illusion of freedom is just that. An illusion. Come the end of the festivities, the pileus goes back into the chest, the dominus returns to his chair, and you return to silence. Your voice, borrowed from Saturn, fades with the smoke from the last oil lamp. But for now, you eat, you laugh, you drink, you pretend. And in that pretending you find something like joy, or maybe just the memory of it. Tomorrow you'll scrub vomit from the atrium tiles. Tomorrow the lash will sing again. But tonight you tell your master his poetry is awful, and he laughs, and you laugh, and you almost forget who you are. This is Saturnalia. This is Rome's strange mercy. And for one stolen moment in the middle of winter, this is enough. Part 3. You wake with a pounding head and a taste in your mouth that might be wine, ash, or the tears of Bacchus himself. Someone has drawn something on your forehead in charcoal. A crude phallus, if you're not mistaken. You are, unfortunately, not mistaken. Welcome to Day 2 of Saturnalia. The party hasn't stopped. It's simply shifted. Like Roman politics or the Tiber's occasional attempts to become everyone's neighbour. There are no shifts or chores today. Well, not official ones. You're technically still a slave, but you've been allowed to collapse on a cushion for the past several hours, which counts as a vacation by Roman standards. You smell like olives and cheap incense. You have breadcrumbs in places no breadcrumb should be, and your dominus is currently dancing with a statue, naked. But the wildest part? No one is stopping him. This, in fact, is encouraged. The Roman elite liked to call Saturnalia a time of libertas, freedom, but it was more like cosplay, controlled chaos, a structured explosion, a chance to play at equality while reinforcing the fact that it isn't real. The more absurd the inversion, the more secure the hierarchy beneath it. And so you, the servant, the shadow in the hall, are now the guest of honour. A dog has been invited to dinner. A senator has been made to serve lentils. Someone is singing a hymn to Saturn that seems to involve a chicken. And through it all Rome smiles. Let's not pretend the Romans were subtle. They celebrated excess like it was a state religion. During Saturnalia, gambling was legal, even encouraged. Children threw dice in the streets. Adults wagered real coin on anything. Wrestling matches, beetle races, whose toga would catch fire first. You lose a few sesterces to a gladiator named Flavius, who swears his pet monkey can juggle. It cannot, but no one minds. It's Saturnalia. Even the streets are different. Gone are the stern glares of toget patricians and the ever-present risk of a parade for some general you've never heard of. Now, garlands hang from doors, torches burn late into the night, and people, actual people, are smiling. You get handed a fig cake by a stranger who calls you Little Master. You don't correct them. And then there's the gifts. Not gold or property, gods forbid, but trinkets. Jokes. Little clay dolls called sigillaria, carved crudely but given with a grin. Cheap candles, wooden carvings, even scrolls with rude poems. The kind of gift you laugh at, then treasure in secret. You give one to a fellow slave. A little wax figure of a donkey that farts when you squeeze it. He cries laughing. It is, without question, the best gift he's ever received. But beneath the revelry you can feel it. The tension. Like a lyre string drawn just a touch too tight. Everyone knows this isn't real. It's the Empire's favourite game, pretend rebellion. And like all good Roman games, it ends with someone being reminded who's really in charge. The Dominus, drunk and decorated in ivy, slurs a toast to Saturn. His wife is asleep in a wine puddle. Someone has tied a garland to the family dog and named it Consul for the day. You are ordered to read a satirical speech mocking the Senate, and for once, you go for it. You call them bloated, useless, more interested in orgies than oratory, which, to be fair, is accurate. Everyone laughs, no one takes offence, except maybe the family's portrait bust of Cicero, which appears to be silently judging you. As the sun sinks and oil lamps glow gold, you wander out into the street. You see other slaves, free for the moment, dancing, embracing, arguing about philosophy with drunk poets. Music spills from villas. Someone is performing a one-man reenactment of the fall of Troy, and he's using cabbages. You're given another cup of wine. You do not refuse. You think for a fleeting second that if every day were Saturnalia, maybe slavery would be bearable. Then you remember the marks on your back, the names they used to call you, the silence you've had to swallow. This isn't freedom, it's theatre. But what a performance it is. The stars above are so bright they almost look real. A child sings a song about Saturn returning to bring peace. An old man passes you a honeyed date and says nothing, but his eyes say, "Enjoy this while it lasts." You do. You bite into the date. It tastes like sunshine remembered. And just for tonight, that's enough. Part 4. South Saturnalia is still going. Somehow. You've lost track of time, and not in the dreamy way where everything feels soft and magical. No, this is the kind of time loss that happens when your blood is 30% wine, and you've had 3 hours of sleep in 4 days. There's someone juggling oil lamps in the courtyard. Someone else is composing a poem about goat entrails. One of the neighbour's slaves is dancing in a toga that doesn't belong to them. And you? You're trying not to fall asleep standing up, because as much as Saturnalia is a break from the usual cruelty, it's also exhausting. Your stomach, still sloshing from fermented fish sauce and honey-drenched everything, is starting to revolt. Your head aches from too many cheers shouted too close to your ear. And the pileus, the hat of pretend freedom, itches like betrayal. But you keep going, because this brief upside-down world is the closest thing to liberty you'll ever touch. But liberty is a funny thing in Rome. Even during Saturnalia, not everyone gets it. The lower slaves, the ones who clean latrines and empty chamber pots, they don't get days off. The mines keep running. The fields still need tending. Someone has to keep the vomitorium from becoming a drowning hazard. And even among the lucky few who get to play free, the truth lurks under every joke. Your Dominus laughs when you call him fat, but you notice the twitch in his jaw, the way he stares a little too long after you call his poetry derivative. You know there's a ledger in his mind, and every insult is an entry. Saturnalia may be lawless, but memory is not. Still, you keep laughing. You keep feasting. Because when the world gives you a crack of light through the dungeon door, you don't ask how long it'll last. You just hold your face up to it and bask. Outside, the streets are a wild theatre. No one's working. Schools are closed. Even courts have shut their doors. The city is one massive party, and you're both performer and audience. Children throw nuts like dice. Men wear women's clothing. Women wear whatever they want. Everyone's gambling, singing, shouting Latin pickup lines that haven't aged well in 2,000 years. And in the middle of it all, the image of Saturn, Father Time himself, sits with bound feet, reminding everyone that even gods can be restrained. But only for a while. You're told Saturn used to rule during a golden age, a time before slaves, before war, before taxes, a time when humans lived in harmony and food grew without toil. You hear this while eating cold lentils from a bowl, shared with 3 other people, and you try not to laugh. Golden age or not this is what you have, and maybe, weirdly, it's enough. But the cracks are showing. The wine is running low. The jokes are getting meaner. The Dominus hasn't laughed in hours. And the Rex Saturnalitius, the slave king who's been issuing ridiculous orders for days, is now passed out in the fountain, his crown soggy and tilting. People are starting to sweep. Someone's scrubbing a stain off the mosaic floor that looks suspiciously like goat blood. The party is winding down, and now comes the part you've been dreading, the return. The Peleus comes off. The synthesis is folded and put away. The cushions disappear. The master clears his throat and everyone falls silent. Saturnalia is over. You bow. You clean. You scrub away the evidence of joy like it was a sin. The house resets itself. The roles return like obedient dogs. Your voice, gone again. But something lingers. A memory. A laugh. The feel of warm oil on your fingers, the echo of someone calling you king, even if it was just a joke. And that echo carries you into the next day. Because Rome will always find ways to remind you of your place, but Saturnalia reminds you that even stone can crack, that even slaves can taste joy, however briefly, and that beneath the layers of domination and ritual and blood, there's still a heartbeat. Yours. Part 5. By the time the cushions are packed away and the final wine stain has been begrudgingly scrubbed out of the atrium mosaic, Saturnalia has fully unravelled back into regular time. No more singing, no more drinking contests, no more pretending. And now, it hurts even worse. It's like waking up from a beautiful dream and remembering you still sleep on a straw mat next to a bucket, not in a warm villa with a feather-stuffed mattress. Your back hurts again, your knees pop. The sweet fog of rebellion has cleared, and in its place, duty, routine, and the familiar ache of being property. But you don't have time to grieve your brief illusion of freedom, because the Roman calendar does not wait. The villa stirs early, especially after a long festival. The floors are sticky, the dish is endless, and the master's expectations have only grown in his hangover. You hear your name, or rather the name you were given. Probably something ironic like Felix, Lucky, or Fortunatus. Fortunate. Romans loved cruel jokes. It's barked at you before sunrise and you're already running. The ludus. Schoolroom needs cleaning. The triclinium smells like boiled boar and regret, and someone has lost a sandal in the impluvium. Again. This is the rhythm now. Scrub, fetch, serve, repeat. And now that Saturnalia is over, the margin for error has shrunk to nothing. You move with the quiet speed of someone who knows that one broken amophora can mean a broken nose. Or worse. You don't complain. Complaining is for citizens. You nod, you bow, you make yourself invisible unless being seen is necessary. It's a delicate dance. Be present but not irritating, helpful but not presumptuous, obedient but not robotic. And all the while, the city around you moves forward with the same merciless grace. Outside the villa, Rome is still Rome. Magnificent, putrid, teeming. A city where senators debate honour while bribing everyone in sight. Where poets die in exile for bad metaphors. Where soldiers conquer entire continents but lose their sandals in the forum. And beneath it all, you. You and the other millions like you who keep the aqueducts flowing, the bread baked, the garments cleaned, the vomit mopped, the temples polished, the animals fed, the amphitheatres ready, the public baths disinfected, and the whole delicate machinery of empire humming along. Because Rome may glorify its generals and marble statues, but it runs on bones like yours. Let's take a moment to consider your options. Maybe you dream of freedom. Not the Saturnalia kind, but the real thing. A manumission, a parchment, a witness, a ceremony, and then citizen clothes, a new name, a new life. It happens. Rarely, but it does. You'd need to be lucky, useful, or deeply loved. Maybe all three, and even then your freedom would be partial, conditional. You'd become a libertus, a freed person, allowed to own property, marry, work for wages, but always marked by your past, always walking a half step behind those who've never worn chains, and your former master, he'd still own a part of you, not your body perhaps, but your loyalty, your social standing, your memory. For many slaves this was the prize, for others it was just another kind of cage. So maybe you don't dream of manumission, maybe you dream of escape. You've heard whispers, slaves who vanished into the hills, joined brigands, or disappeared into the alleyways of distant ports, rebels, runners, ghosts. But you've also seen what happens when they're caught. Crucifixion isn't just a punishment, it's a message, a billboard of pain nailed to a roadside. So you weigh your choices, dream carefully, keep your head down. You wonder, who am I beneath all this? If I wasn't someone's property, what would I be? Rome will never answer that for you, but maybe you can. In the quiet moments, when the villa sleeps, when the coals glow low in the kitchen hearth, when the only sound is distant dogs barking, you think. Remember, imagine. You trace letters in the dust if you're literate. You hum songs from a homeland you barely remember. You become more than the task, for just a second. Because being a slave in Rome is not just suffering, it's surviving, adapting, enduring, and sometimes quietly it's resisting, not with swords or slogans, but with humanity. So yes, you're back to servitude. The festival is over. The master's smile has vanished. The jokes have turned sour. But something in you, however small, remains upright. Because once a year, the gods gave you laughter. They gave you wine and music and a moment where your voice carried weight. And even if that was just pretend, it was enough to remind you that silence isn't the natural state. And next Saturnalia, you'll laugh again, because Rome will keep spinning, and so will you. Part 6. You wake up sore. Not the good kind of sore after dancing all night or lifting something impressively heroic. Number. This is the kind of sore that comes from sleeping on stone, with your neck at an angle last seen in the ruins of Pompeii. The kind of sore that says, "Congratulations, you survived another Roman winter night without dying of exposure or rodents. The house is quiet. Too quiet. Saturnalia is well and truly dead. Its garlands have withered. The candles are stubs. And the only thing left from the feast is a stain that smells vaguely of goat and defeat. You shuffle toward the kitchen, not because you're hungry. Hunger is a constant, like gravity or the master's mood swings, but because movement is better than stillness. Stillness invites thought. Thought invites rebellion, and rebellion invites crucifixion. Today is about returning to normal, which is to say, today is about forgetting. The Dominus is in his usual spot, already barking about his toga not being properly folded. It's not your job, but it will be soon if the assigned slave doesn't appear in the next 5 seconds. He doesn't. You fold the toga. Outside, the streets are littered with post-festival debris. Bits of costume, dried fruit rinds, the occasional sandal abandoned like a Roman Cinderella story with no happy ending. Vendors are reassembling their carts. Children are being dragged home by exhausted parents. The city is exhaling one long collective groan, and in the middle of it all you go back to being invisible. Your tasks return, sweeping, scrubbing, fetching, obeying. The brief glimpse of freedom has retreated into the realm of dreams, a tale to be whispered about next year if you're still around. You overhear something interesting while cleaning the atrium. A visiting merchant talking to the master about a slave market opening up near the Forum Boreum. New shipments arriving, fresh bodies. You don't react. But inside, your stomach tightens. Because for every new slave there must be a reason to need one. And reasons tend to begin with words like punishment, replacement, or accident. You suddenly miss Saturnalia more than you thought you would. Later, you're summoned to help prepare for a dinner party. Not one you'll attend, obviously. Your role is more ghost in the walls than guest. You polish silverware that isn't yours, lay out food you won't eat, and fluff cushions you'll never sit on. The guests arrive in fine silk and arrogance. They speak of politics, of theatre, of philosophy, as if any of it matters, as if they don't all bleed the same colour when stabbed in a back alley. You pass behind them silently, like a breeze, holding a pitcher of wine worth more than your life. Someone makes a joke about Saturnalia, about how amusing it was to see the slaves pretending to be people. You don't spill the wine. Afterward the guests leave, full and bored. The master belches something unintelligible and retires. You clean. Again. You scrape bits of fig and duck off platters while your own stomach growls like an angry deity. Finally, when the torches are low and the silence is heavy, you're allowed to eat. Whatever's left. A crust here, a smear there, a half-chewed olive if you're lucky, and then you sleep, if you can call it that. The cold returns. So does the soreness, so does the silence, and in the silence, a thought, a small traitorous whisper in your mind. Is this it? Is this all? But you push it away. You have to, because the only thing more dangerous than asking that question is trying to answer it. Part 7. You wake up to shouting. Not festive shouting, not Saturnalia laughter, but the sharp bark of commands and the sound of something or someone being dragged across stone. Your body aches. Every muscle protests. Your head is pounding like the forum bell at midday. You don't know if it's from the wine, the cold, or the fact that you fell asleep on a pile of laundry that wasn't even dry. It doesn't matter. The world has shifted again. Saturnalia is truly over now, not just symbolically. The garlands are gone. The halls are swept. The vomit is mostly cleaned. The master smiles no more, and neither do you. You move quickly, too quickly, because a slow slave is a lazy slave, and a lazy slave is a punished one. No one tells you this aloud. They don't have to. The rules are soaked into the walls, baked into the clay tiles beneath your feet. You barely finish dressing when you're given your orders. The atrium needs polishing. The master's cloak smells like goat again. There's a shipment of olives arriving from Ostia, and someone's going to need to help unload. And by someone, they mean you. Out on the street, Rome is a different city now. The colours are muted. The masks are gone. People are serious again. The city of joy has returned to being a city of stone. You pass a man on the corner who looks familiar. Wasn't he dancing in a woman's veil 2 nights ago? Now he's berating a slave for walking too close. You lower your gaze. You shrink. You keep moving. At the docks, the air is thick with salt, sweat, and fish. Crates are stacked taller than you. The foreman points. You lift, you carry, you repeat. One slip, one broken amphora, and it's not the wine that bleeds. It's your back. You work until your hands are raw, until your arms tremble, until your tunic clings to you like a second, slightly soggier skin. And still, no one thanks you. Because in Rome, gratitude is for gods and generals. You're neither. By midday, the sun is merciless. You get a moment to sit, not because someone offered it, but because your legs decided they were done cooperating. A child walks by and drops a crust of bread. Your stomach lurches. Is it worth it? Probably not. But you're hungry. Always hungry. You reach for it. A dog growls first, then snaps. You pull your hand back. Even the dogs have hierarchy here. Later, back at the domus, the master's in a foul mood. The olives were late. The cloak still smells. And someone forgot to refill the oil lamps in the triclinium. Guess who? You try to explain, but you forget your tone. Your eyes rise too high. Your words come too quickly. The backhand is immediate. It tastes like iron. You bow. You apologize. You're dismissed. Not to rest. To scrub the peristyle floor. On your knees. Again. You stare at the mosaic tiles. As dancing satyr, forever joyful. You wonder what it would take to switch places. Would the satyr like your life? Would he last a day? You chuckle quietly. Even your fantasies are ridiculous now. That night you eat in the slave quarters. Pottage again. Cold, congealed, and flecked with something you pretend is lentil. Someone sings. A slow, mournful tune about a river that never forgets. You lie down on your straw mat. There's a flea circus on your ankle. Your ribs ache. Your soul feels thin. And yet, there's something else too. Not hope. Not exactly. That's too strong a word. But memory. You remember laughter. Garlands. The way the master flinched when you called him pompous. The taste of warm honey cakes. The slap of sandals dancing on marble. You remember Saturnalia. It's over, yes, but it happened. And somehow that's enough to keep breathing. Part 8. South. Let's say you've survived Saturnalia. Congratulations. You've endured the most chaotic, wine-drenched, goat-blood-splattered holiday Rome has to offer. The toga's back in storage. The laughter has faded. And your Dominus has gone back to pretending he's a god while treating you like dirt. Business as usual. And now it's January. There's no fresh start, no resolutions, no new year, new you, There's just more work, more cold mornings, and more of the same aching hunger that keeps your ribs looking like they're trying to escape your skin. You are a cog in the Empire's great grinding machine, and the cogs don't get breaks. They just keep turning until they crack. You're back to hauling amphora, scrubbing atriums, and being blamed for things like the weather, or the fact that your master's statue of Apollo doesn't feel as radiant as it used to. Even the city feels hungover. Rome herself smells like smoke and regret. The gutters are clogged with wilted garlands and broken dreams. Everything is damp. Everything is echoing. Everyone is pretending they didn't say or do what they absolutely said and did just a week ago. And as you trudge past temples and market stalls, past haughty matrons and swaggering legionaries, you begin to remember that Saturnalia was a pocket of air, and now you're back underwater. The routines return with a vengeance. You're awake before the sun. Again. There is no snooze button, just a harsh shake or a sharp word from a fellow slave who's equally miserable. You dress in the same stiff stained tunic as yesterday. You eat a crust of bread so hard you consider using it as a weapon. And then you serve. You serve tables, carry loads, fan sweaty nobles during yet another poetry reading where someone compares Caesar to a swan. You've never even seen a swan. If you're houseborn, you've probably developed a sixth sense for your master's moods, whether you want silence or flattery or someone to blame for his indigestion. If you're new, bought off a dock from some ship that smell like urine and foreign spices, you're still learning. Learning the names, the rules, the traps. And make no mistake, Rome is full of traps. There are rules, but they are unwritten. There are customs, but they shift like sand. What's charming one day is insolent the next. Smile too much, you're plotting. Don't smile, you're ungrateful. Speak out of turn, you're a threat. Stay silent too long, you're hiding something. You live on a knife's edge and everyone is watching. Not just the masters, other slaves too. Because in a system this brutal, sometimes the only power you have is to redirect pain. Someone else takes the blame, someone else gets the beating. Rome didn't invent cruelty, but it did industrialize it. And let's not forget punishment. In case you've grown too comfortable, let's revisit the wonderful world of Roman discipline. There's flogging, always a favourite. Whips with metal tips so every lash sings. There's branding, yes, branding, with hot irons, because nothing says property quite like seared skin. And then there's crucifixion, reserved for special occasions, political theatre really. A way of reminding everyone, slaves especially, that pain is the final law. Of course, not every master is a monster. Some are merely indifferent, cold, empty. They don't scream or beat. They just look through you, like you're a particularly animated piece of furniture. You're not a person, you're a function, and that somehow is worse, because the screams of cruelty end. But the silence of being nothing, that lingers. Now, imagine getting sick, not gravely sick, just the sniffles, a fever, a cough. In modern times, you'd call in sick, make tea, wrap yourself in a blanket and binge something on a screen. But here, you work. If you're lucky, they ignore your cough. If you're not, you're considered defective, weak, a liability. And Rome has no tolerance for liabilities. Some masters send sick slaves away to rot quietly. Others try home remedies, honey, garlic, prayers to obscure gods. And if you're really lucky, maybe a local healer gives you something made of herbs and hope. But medicine in Rome is a gamble. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it makes you hallucinate, sometimes it just kills you faster. Either way, you're not getting a day off, and even if you recover, you're still behind, still weaker, still more disposable. And that's the word, isn't it? Disposable. Because the market's full of you, shiploads of you. Rome eats people, chews them up, spits them out, buys more. You're not unique. You're not safe. You're not remembered. But here's the twist. You're not alone either. Because for all its cruelty, Rome is also full of people like you. Fellow slaves. Strangers turned friends. Friends turned family. There's a bond in shared suffering. In glances exchanged over a pile of dirty dishes. In whispered jokes in dark corridors. In the simple, silent act of holding a door open a second longer than necessary. There's humanity in the cracks. Somehow, despite everything, people find each other. You might teach someone your language. Someone might sneak you a fig. You might laugh. Real laughter. Not the kind forced during Saturnalia, but the kind that bubbles up and startles you with its honesty. And in those moments, brief, fragile, precious, you feel it. Resistance, not with swords, not with riots, but with presence, with memory, with care, with the simple refusal to become a thing, because Rome wants you to be silent, invisible, broken. But sometimes you look up at the moon as you haul water, and you remember you are still here, and that matters. Part 9. So now you're back in the field. The party is long over, the garlands rotted into compost, the wine stains faded from the courtyard stones. Saturnalia is just a memory, soft and shimmering, like a fever dream you can't quite believe was real. You're hoeing soil that will never love you back under a sky that forgot how to smile. And your Dominus? He's back to his old self, smug, distant, comfortable. The same man who let you call him a donkey in front of the whole household is now watching you like a hawk, waiting for one missed step, one lazy swing of the tool, one reason. Because the punishment doesn't need to match the crime. It never did. In Rome, punishment is a mood, a whim, a passing cloud in your master's otherwise sunny day, and you are the lightning rod. You work until your hands bleed, and then you work harder. There are no sick days, no breaks, no rights. If your body collapses, they might give you a bucket of cold water to get you moving again, or they might leave you there. It depends on how generous they're feeling. And the worst part? You start to forget that anything else was ever real. The days blur, the whip cracks. Your name becomes a number, then a grunt, then nothing at all. And still, the empire grows. You hear whispers of far-off lands, of battles in Dacia, of rebellions in Judea, of something strange and stirring in the east, a new sect of people who follow a crucified rebel and call him divine. But here, in the fields, none of that matters. You're too busy trying not to die to worry about theology. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you're loaned out to a villa for harvest. It means more work, sure, but also more food, slightly better conditions, maybe a roof that doesn't leak, and fewer eyes watching. Just maybe, you can breathe a little. But you don't dare think about running. The penalty for that is crucifixion, and you've seen it. You've smelled it. You've heard the flies buzzing, the crows cawing, the soft broken gasps that take days to fade. Rome makes examples of its fugitives. It builds entire highways of warning signs. So you stay, you work, you survive, and then one day something changes. Or rather, someone changes. The Dominus's wife has died. Suddenly. Fever, they say. Or poison, some whisper. There are rumours. There are always rumours. But what matters is this. The Dominus is grieving, and grief in Rome is a strange and dangerous beast. He stops eating. He starts praying to gods you've never heard of. He consults augurs, dreams, dead chickens. The house becomes quiet, then tense. then terrifying. And you are now the face of everything that can go wrong. His rage has to go somewhere. His confusion needs a target. Congratulations, it's you. He doesn't beat you right away. That would be too easy. Instead, he begins with silence, then longer hours, then smaller meals, then no meals, then one day you are summoned. He looks at you like he's never seen you before. You were smiling yesterday, he says. You weren't. Did you find something funny about my wife's funeral? You didn't. But it doesn't matter, because truth is elastic here. It stretches to fit whatever shape your master needs it to. You are punished. It is public. It is brutal. It is meant to be a lesson, not just to you, but to the others. The lesson is simple. Remember your place. Always. Afterward, you don't move for hours. They leave you lying in the dirt. You watch ants crawl across your arm and wonder if they think you're dead. You wonder if they'd care either way. But you're not dead. Not yet. Just a little less alive. And somehow, this is where you begin to change. Because there is a strange kind of freedom in having nothing left to lose. You stop trying to please. You stop hoping for kindness. You just become quiet, observant, careful. You learn the rhythms of the house better than anyone. You learn who drinks too much, who hides things, who forgets to lock the storeroom. You start collecting tiny truths like seeds. And eventually, when the moment is right, you plant them. One word here, one rumour there. Nothing big, nothing bold, just small turns of the wheel, and slowly the house starts to shift. You're not free, but you're not helpless. You become useful, not in the way of breaking your back in the fields, but in the way of knowing things, seeing things. You become a shadow with ears, and Rome respects shadows, if only because it fears what they might reveal. So when a new overseer is appointed and they ask who knows the household best, your name is whispered. And for the first time you are promoted, not to freedom, not to luxury, but to a place just a little safer, a little warmer, a little more fed. It is not justice, it is not redemption, it is not even good, but it is more than you had, and in Rome, sometimes that is enough. By now, you've almost forgotten what silence feels like. The clamour of Roman life, even after Saturnalia, returns not with a whisper, but with a vengeance. Gone are the garlands, gone is the laughter, gone is the ridiculous crown you wore on your wine-slick forehead. Instead, the sound of orders barked before dawn, the scrape of sandals over worn stone, the grumble of your stomach as you're handed the same rough bread you've eaten since childhood. Welcome back. You're a slave again. But then again, you never stopped. The fields call, the domus demands, and the city. Oh, the city never sleeps, because somewhere, someone always needs something. A cloak mended, a letter delivered, a corpse burned. And who answers? You do. Of course you do. Today is laundry day. Or perhaps yesterday was. Or maybe it's just always laundry day when you're low enough on the hierarchy. Either way, you're elbow deep in a public laundromat, or what passes for one in Rome, the Fullonica. Think ancient laundromat meets chemical weapons testing site. The stench hits before the door even opens. That's because Roman laundry is cleaned not with lavender and sunshine, but with stale urine. Yes, human urine, collected in jars that citizens kindly leave on street corners, like little offerings to the gods of sanitation. It's full of ammonia, they say, breaks down stains, they say, works like magic. You try not to breathe as you stomp tunics in it barefoot. The fullers, professional launders, are cheerful in that dead-eyed way of people who've long stopped noticing the smell. You? on the other hand, are new here, or unlucky, or punished. Doesn't matter. You're here now, and your job is to press, bleach, and beat garments until they look clean, or at least cleaner than when they arrived. Your hands will smell like piss for a week. But it's not all bodily fluids and mildew. Sometimes you're lent out to the bathhouses, Rome's favourite pastime, right after conquest and bread riots. Bathhouses are communal, hierarchical, and somehow more political than the Senate. You serve the rich in their steam-fueled sanctuaries, wiping sweat from marble benches, heating the caldarium, scrubbing their backs when asked, because saying no is not an option. And gods help you if you enter the wrong room, or touch the wrong robe, or speak to the wrong senator's mistress, because slaves don't get second chances in a world where your life is worth less than a used sandal. Sometimes you deliver messages. Romans love writing things down. Lists, love notes, curses, recipes, shopping instructions for exotic fish sauce. You name it. So you jog across the city, scroll in hand, dodging ox carts and pickpockets, your feet calloused and bleeding. There are no breaks, no shade, no thank yous. And then there's the circus. Not the kind with clowns, the Roman kind, where blood is entertainment and the masses scream for more. The Circus Maximus is the largest in the empire. Chariot races, gladiators, executions dressed up as halftime shows. Sometimes your master attends, sometimes he takes you, not to watch, of course, to carry things, to shield his face from dust, to hold the snacks, and if you're very unlucky, to drag away the dead, because someone has to. And after all that, after the filth, the running, the noise, the fear, what do you get? A corner of straw, maybe a bowl of millet, if it wasn't forgotten. And if you're very, very lucky, a moment, a stolen second under the moonlight, a joke whispered with another slave, a glimpse of a child you helped birth now learning to walk, a kind look from someone who sees you not as a tool but a person, tiny, fragile scraps of humanity that you collect like treasures, because they're all you have. You're not free. You may never be. But tonight your body's too tired to ache and your mind finally goes quiet. And in the silence something strange happens. You sleep. Part 11. And now, as we come to the end of our long journey through Saturnalia and the daily toll of life as a Roman slave, take one more breath. You made it. Somehow. Not just through the chaos of ancient rituals and amphorae of wine, but through the quiet cruelty that outlasts even the wildest festivals. But even here, in the deep silence after the drums have stopped, there is something more to hold on to. Because your story, yes, yours, isn't just one of suffering, it's one of survival, of laughter stolen from the jaws of dread, of memories wrapped in fabric and footsteps and bowls of lentils. You've endured the lash and the feast, the insult and the song. You've been silenced, and yet, here you are, still listening, still breathing. Maybe, just maybe, that's enough. You see, Rome doesn't want you to remember that. It wants you to forget, to believe that greatness only lives in the marble statues and in the names of emperors. But history, it doesn't only belong to the victors, it also belongs to the quiet ones, the ones who served, suffered, and smiled anyway. The ones whose names were never carved, but whose hands built everything. You didn't last a day as a Roman slave, and that's okay. No one really could, not without losing pieces of themselves, but they tried. They lived, and they left behind echoes, traces of humanity so fierce they still hum under the stones of the Forum. And as for Saturnalia, well, that strange, upside-down, wine-soaked dream may be gone for now, but it reminds us. The world can be flipped, power can wobble, even gods can be bound. And freedom, however fleeting, is always waiting for its moment. So tonight, wherever you are, on a creaky mattress, a long couch, or headphones tucked under a pillow, know this: you are part of something ancient, something absurd, something real. Thank you for spending your time here. Our story ends here for now. I hope it helped you drift off into sleep, or at least carried your thoughts gently toward rest. But if you're still awake, no need to worry. Don't try to force it. Just stay here with me a while longer. Let the words fall away. Let the quiet take over. Now, all that's left is the soft, steady hush of falling rain. May its rhythm carry you the rest of the way. Good night.